Good evening. This is All Sports with LD coming back at you with another YouTube post from my YouTube channel. Before I get into tonight's content, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. Okay, let's get into it. Supposedly, June 5th, 2022, George Kambosos versus Devin Haney is supposed to take place in Australia. I've been watching boxing for a number of years. And over this time span of watching the sport of boxing, I can tell when a fighter doesn't want to fight a specific fighter. And this is what has happened with this fight. George Kambosos does not want to fight Devin Haney. And I'll tell you why he doesn't. So if you remember back in October 2021, Davis fought Cruz and he won that fight. Well, Kambosos already saw Davis win that fight, so this guy wasn't even on the radar. Davis wasn't on his radar, although he said Davis's name, but he was grandstanding. So December 4th, 2021, he's at the Devin Haney fight with Haney's last fight against. And as Kambosos was watching this fight, he had already made his decision. He wasn't fighting Devin Haney because he saw real time the speed, the reflexes, the talent, and the skill of this young 23-year-old fighter. He decided at that moment he wasn't going to fight Haney. If you recall, after the fight was over, they were talking with the sportscaster. And if you remember, George Kambosos never definitively said at that interview, Devin Haney, you are next. He never said that. What happened was, the dog told him, Kambosos, I'll come to your backyard and fight. See, this is something that Kambosos didn't expect. And in his mind, he's like, that's not the dog I want to fight. See, fighters will show you who they really are. Don't listen to their words, watch their actions. So, and this is why I say he never wanted to fight Haney. So again, let me state it again. He never definitively said to Haney, you are next. Now, 7 days later, December 11, 2021, he sees Lomachenko fight. Lomachenko was victorious. In my opinion, wasn't really impressive. I mean, when you compare his fight to Haney's fight, Haney had a better showing. So, after seeing Lomachenko fight, weeks later, now we hear rumblings about a Kambosos and a Lomachenko fight. So when he saw Lomachenko, he decided then that's who his next opponent was. Now, mind you, Lomachenko's already had 2 losses. So as Mayweather would say on a normal basis, see, there's 2 ways to beat Lomachenko. Nobody's beaten Devin Haney yet, so we don't know how to beat. No one knows how to beat Devin Haney. So immediately he starts putting feelers out there to fight Lomachenko. And so here's further proof why George Kambosos never wanted to fight Devin Haney. So now, what generally happens is when a fighter doesn't want to fight a certain fighter, they'll bring up ticket sales. So he's trying to tell the public, Kambosos and his team is trying to tell the public that fighting for the undisputed lightweight championship of the world. Two undefeated fighters will not generate ticket sales. Yet they're trying to convince you that Kambosos fighting Lomachenko, who's lost 2 fights already. They're trying to tell you that's going to generate more ticket sales. Okay, so that's also how you know a fighter doesn't want a fighter fight a specific fighter. They'll bring up the ticket sales. It's totally garbage. It's total BS. The other excuse that was used, and let me go to it. The WBO had made it very clear that it would strip George Kambosos Jr. if he were to fight anybody other than the mandatory Vasily Lomachenko. Kambosos' manager, Peter Kahn, told ESPN, George did not want to relinquish any of the belts and therefore was going to fight the mandatory. In his mind, he was always going to win and then would move on to fight Devin Haney. So stop. And this is bogus. And I'm going to tell you why. So you're telling me George Kambosos Jr., who is acknowledged as already the undisputed lineal lightweight champion of the world, you're telling the fans that you didn't want to fight or risk losing your WBO belt so you would fight Lomachenko instead of Haney. Now, mind you, the WBO is the only belt that's threatening to strip, according to them, threatening to strip Kambosos Jr. if he didn't fight Lomachenko. Now, keep in mind, out of the 4 belts, meaning the WBA, WBC, IBF, and WO. WBO started in 1988. All the other 3 belts started much earlier and has more history and are more prestigious. So again, you're telling me you don't want to risk getting stripped by the WBO so that you're choosing to fight Lomachenko instead? That's all cap. It's all cap. Because according to them, the WBO is the only belt in the lightweight division apparently on record saying they're going to strip Kambosos Jr. WBA, the IBF, and the WBC, all of them are on board with the unification bout. I have the rankings. WBC, Vasily Lomachenko was ranked number 1. Yet, the WBC, which Haney holds, has not talked about stripping Haney if he fought Kambosos Jr. instead of Lomachenko. WBA, which George Kambosos is the champion of, hasn't talked about stripping Kambosos if he fought Haney, with Rolando Romero being the number 1 ranked contender. And also WBC says that Lomachenko is ranked number 1. IBF, which George Kambosos holds, there's no one there except for the number 2, Isaac Cruz. So this is how the lightweight division looks. So you're telling me, or you're telling the fans, that you don't want to fight for the undisputed lightweight championship of the world against an undefeated fighter who holds the WBC belt because you're afraid the WBO is going to strip you of the title. Again, this is all cap. This is a man who does not want to fight Haney, period. He's using the excuse that the WBO will strip him. And maybe it is true that WBO will strip him. But who cares? Listen, if you remember back when Lennox Lewis had just beaten Evander Holyfield for the 2nd time and regarded as the undisputed linear heavyweight champion of the world. At the time, I believe John Ruiz was the number 1 contender for the WBC version of the heavyweight title. It was the WBA. So here it is. After Lewis defeated Holyfield, the WBA ordered Lewis to defend the title against John Ruiz of Chelsea, Massachusetts, who was then an obscure Don King fighter who had been made the WBA's #1 ranked contender. The WBA gave permission for Lewis to fight with his WBC mandatory Michael Grant first, if he would fight Ruiz next, to which Lewis agreed. Opposed to this, King challenged the decision in court on the basis of a clause in the Lewis-Holyfield rematch contract that said Lewis' first bout as undisputed champion would be against the WBA's #1 contender. Lewis was therefore to be stripped of his WBA belt if he fought Grant first. It was because of this that the WBA instated its super champion title, giving unified title holders who also hold a WBA belt more time to defend against mandatory challenges. So what happened is that Lennox Lewis said, no, I'm not fighting John Ruiz. I'm going to fight the toughest guy that everybody says that's out there, being Michael Grant. He went ahead and took that fight and beat Michael Grant. Now, even though the WBA stripped Lennox Lewis of that title, he was still recognized as the undisputed linear heavyweight champion of the world. And see, what Lennox Lewis showed is, I don't care what title I hold, you cannot dictate to me who I should fight. I am the undisputed linear heavyweight champion of the world. Well, Kambosos is running around here like WBO is running things. Again, you're telling me you're willing to forego fighting Devin Haney to hold on to the WBO strap? Again, I might add, has less history and less prestige than the WBA, WBC, and IBF belts. Really? Again, this is all cap. Furthermore, Kambosos is on record saying that Devin Haney is the B-side of the lightweight division. Is he really? If he's the B-side of the lightweight division, and presumably Kambosos considers himself the A-side, well, wouldn't it make sense get the B-side out of the way because you know you can beat him and he's not much of a challenge? No, of course not. He goes out of his way to avoid the person he says is a B-side level fighter in the lightweight division. He goes out of his way to avoid him. And now, only because Lomachenko decided to stay in the Ukraine because of what's going on over there, now he's forced to fight Haney on June 5th. Listen, I've told you before, I've watched boxing for a long time, and I know when a fighter does not want any part of another fighter. George Kambosos Jr. does not want to fight Devin Haney, and I will be shocked if this fight actually comes off, because as of today, Kambosos still hasn't signed the contract. Devin Haney has. His excuse is, I wanted to make sure when we get the contract, everything's on the up and up. What are you saying? You're the undisputed lightweight champion of the world. What are you talking about? Everything's on the up and up. See, like I said, this guy is grandstanding. And if this fight comes off June 5th, Haney's going to school Kambosos because he already knows Haney's faster, he's younger, he has more talent, he has better skill. And in fact, if Kambosos got put in the canvas first round against Teofimo Lopez, who I believe wasn't even mentally nor physically in shape for that fight, what will Haney do to him? Haney's going to school Kambosos, and Kambosos knows it. And this is why he's gone out of his way to make excuses why he didn't want to fight Haney first. But now, since Lomachenko's off the board, he has to fight him now. So for now, this is what I have. Have a good one.